The Royal Commission is now in session.
Yes, Ms Eastman.
Commissioners, the first witness is Paula McGowan. She's here in the hearing room in Sydney and she'll take an affirmation.
Thank you. Ms McGowan, if you wouldn't mind following the instructions of my associate, who will stand up and explain to you what is to happen. No, that's okay, you can stay.
I will read you the affirmation. At the end, please say yes or I do. Do you solemnly and sincerely declare and affirm that the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Ms McGowan. Ms Eastman will now ask you some questions.
So your name is Paula Catherine McGowan.
It is.
And I might just need you to speak up a little bit. And you are an early years teacher.
I am.
And you have made a statement for the Royal Commission on the 5th of September. Is that right?
That is, yes, correct.
Commissioners, you'll find a copy of the statement in Tender Bundle Part A at tab 1 with some additional material behind tabs 2, 3 and 4. And Commissioners, can I ask you to receive the statement and the additional material into evidence and mark the exhibit as 6.1 and then 6.1.1 through to 6.1.3.
Thank you. Yes, we shall do that.
Now, Ms McGowan, you're going to read part of your statement and you've got a copy there. Before you do so, can you confirm that the contents of your statement are true?
They are.
Can I now invite you to start reading at paragraph 2, and we're going to stop along the way. Stop. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Paula Catherine McGowan, and I am married to Thomas McGowan, and we are the parents of Thomas Oliver McGowan, known as Oliver, who died aged 18 on the 11th of November 2016 in Southmead Hospital, Bristol, United Kingdom. References in this statement to we, us, or our refer to my husband and I. Tom was in the military in the UK and transferred to the Australian Air Force directly after Oliver's inquest in April 2018. We now live in Australia and have Australian citizenship. When we lived in England, I was working as a teacher with children who had additional needs, particularly those with autism and intellectual disability. In the United Kingdom, the term learning disability is used to describe intellectual disability. References in this statement to learning disability should be taken to also mean intellectual disability. My passion and drive has always been to give equal, positive, and quality education to all children. It is my role to mediate and modify a curriculum that is accessible for every child. Every child matters, irrespective of ability or disability. We are supporters of the National Health Service, known as the NHS campaign on stopping the over-medication of people with intellectual disability, autism or both, which is known as the STOMP campaign, which will be discussed later. This campaign in England was started to address the inappropriate and overuse of psychotropic medication to manage behaviour in people with intellectual disability. I believe that there are several lessons from the STOMP campaign and related developments in the UK that would be useful for Australia in addressing the same issues here. As set out in Article 25 of the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, all people with disabilities have the right to health and high-quality healthcare without discrimination. This means that psychotropic medication should only ever be used in appropriate circumstances, safely, and with the consent of the person with disability, not as a first resort in order to control their perceived behaviour. Clinicians should treat in partnership with the patient, their families and carers using a non-pharmaceutical approach and evaluate the effectiveness of that approach over an agreed period of time.
Can I ask you to pause there? You're about to tell us about Oliver and you wanted to share a photograph of Oliver. So we'll put that up on the screen now. Commissioner, this might be one of the technical glitches that you asked us to be patient with. So, Ms McGowan, while the photo is coming up, can I ask you just to keep reading, and paragraph 7, you start to tell us about Oliver, and his photo will come up, I think, as you speak.
We have a glitch technique for determining when we can go back, so they'll let us know and we'll work out when the photo can be shown.
Thank you. Let me tell you about my beautiful son, Oliver. From the moment Oliver was born, my husband and I knew that he was special, and our love for him was simply overwhelming. Oliver was born a month premature, and at 3 weeks of age, he developed bacterial meningitis. He was very ill, and we were told by the doctors that they simply did not expect him to survive. However, he began to recover. 2 weeks after discharge, Oliver developed a second episode of meningitis. And sadly, the meningitis caused Oliver to have an infarction, so a stroke, to his brain, which resulted in a mild hemiplegia, cerebral palsy, focal seizure epilepsy, a mild intellectual disability, and later on, a diagnosis of high-functioning autism. But Oliver's disabilities didn't hold him back. He met all his developmental milestones and was placed on the average percentile charts. He had an absolutely steely determination and can-do attitude. He played football for the South West Centre of Excellence Cerebral Palsy England Development Squad, so he was playing for England FA. He was also a registered T35 athlete with the power of 10 and was ranked 3rd best in the country for running 200 metres. Oliver was a member of Team Bath Athletic Club and harboured a realistic ambition of becoming a Paralympian. Oliver was a natural leader who became a school prefect and an active member of the school council at his high school. He attained and passed GCSE, which stands for the General Certificate of Secondary Education in England, and BTEC, which stands for the Business and Technology Education Council in England qualifications. And he went on to attend a specialist further education college for people with physical disabilities, acquired brain injuries, and associated learning difficulties. The college's opinion of Oliver were very complimentary. They were writing how friendly and kind he was. He was supporting students who were far less able than himself. They highlighted his wicked sense of humour. They themselves also had aspirations for him to start a sports college at a local ski centre. As you can see, Oliver brought so much happiness and fun to our lives. He always saw the best in everything and everyone, and he taught us all how to look at things differently. His courage and enthusiasm for life was just simply inspirational. Now, we were told by Oliver's neurologist that he had a full life expectancy and he would live an independent life with a small amount of support. However, in October 2015, Oliver was admitted to a children's hospital, having what we and the college staff recognised to be simple partial focal seizures. And quite rightly, these caused Oliver to be scared and confused. After being discharged from hospital, Oliver continued to have simple partial seizures, around 1 per fortnight. And he was given antidepressant medication, which surprised us because Oliver wasn't depressed. Oliver loved life, and life certainly seemed to love Oliver. When this medication was increased, it caused a change to Oliver's mood and increased his seizures greatly. and as a result, he was admitted back to the same hospital in December 2015. But this time, Oliver was given an antipsychotic medication. But Oliver didn't have a diagnosis of psychosis or mental illness. We absolutely strongly believe that the doctors were misunderstanding Oliver's normal autistic behaviours. Oliver was treated at several hospitals for those seizures. And during the course of these treatments, he was given antipsychotic medication on a number of occasions. This medication was given to him because he was displaying what were perceived to be challenging behaviours whilst he was in seizure. In reality, his behaviour was the very same as any other person's would be in seizure and compromised. Oliver was frightened, and as a result, quite rightly, he was anxious. We believe that if Oliver had not have had the labels of autism and intellectual disability attached to him, he would absolutely not have been prescribed psychotropic medications.
I just ask you to pause there so I understand that the photo that we're going to show when you started talking about Oliver is now available. So we'll put that photo up.
Is that correct? No, it's not correct. Apparently the photograph is not available as yet.
I apologise, Ms McGowan. The effect on... We are having the technical glitches today. I apologise for that. That's Oliver.
That's my beautiful son.
How old was he when that photo was taken?
Oliver, this is just months before Oliver went into hospital. This is the normal Oliver that we knew, and his friends, teachers, everybody recognised.
Okay. And so that's the Oliver that you've spoken about. And you were up to the point of your statement about Oliver then being in the hospital and the administration of these medications. So can I take you back to paragraph 14? Thank you. Do you want to start from there?
Yes, that's great. Thank you. The effect of these medications were absolutely catastrophic. Oliver's seizure threshold and agitation deteriorated, and we didn't recognise that beautiful boy that you can all see up there. Oliver was now hallucinating. He was now having 30 seizures a day, something we'd absolutely never seen happen before. Oliver was now having problems urinating. He had extremely high blood pressure readings, and he was sweating profusely. We walked into Oliver's room one day and found him having what is known as an ocular gyrate crisis, which is a serious dystonic side effect of those very medications, which caused his eyes to roll upwards.
Right. Can you pause there? And he wanted to show another photograph. And I'll give the number if that provides some assistance. So it's IND.0041.001.004. I'll just put this photograph up.
Yeah, I think the photo is on.
That's a hard photo to look at.
To go from the Oliver that you have seen to exactly what a psychotropic medication can do is quite shocking.
Let's go back to what happened in the hospital. So this is a photo that you took of Oliver at that time. And what happened? Was he left for a period of time?
So Oliver himself, being the person he was, kept apologising for the state he was in. And Oliver was left like this for 6 long hours. As my husband and I heard the doctor in the doorway say, he's making it up. It's behavioural. After 6 long hours, when they realised he wasn't making it up, procyclidine had to be administered to counteract that reaction. And it took 15 seconds to work. We strongly believe that the drugs were the cause of decline in Oliver's mood. It was obvious to us that the doctors and nurses had little to no understanding of autism and how autistic behaviours could present in a person with ongoing seizures. When Oliver was taken off this medication, his mood and seizure activity returned back to normal. It was clear to us that he was sensitive to antipsychotic medication. In October 2016, Oliver had a cluster of those very same partial seizures and was admitted to a general hospital. This time he was intubated and as a result developed pneumonia. Now, despite making it very clear to the doctors and nurses at the hospital that they absolutely did not have our or Oliver's permission to do so, Oliver was given an antipsychotic medication, namely olanzapine. Oliver had an adverse reaction to the olanzapine and developed neuroleptic malignant syndrome, known as NMS. And as a result, we were told by the doctors that Oliver's brain was now so badly swollen, it was bulging out the base of his skull. It was so badly damaged that Oliver was now profoundly disabled. Oliver had no more speech. There was no more understanding of language. He had absolutely no way of communicating. Oliver would be reliant on a tracheotomy and would be tube fed for the rest of his life. Oliver was now paralysed. There was no more representing his country in athletics or football. That beautiful smile that we saw earlier, his sense of humour, and those words of wisdom were gone forever. Oliver was silenced. The doctors told us that Oliver had no chance of recovery or return to any sort of meaningful life, and the decision was made to turn his life support machines off. Oliver passed away on Armistice Day, the 11th of November 2016. This is a very poignant day for us, as Oliver is and was a military child and had lived all of his life as part of the United Kingdom's Royal Air Force family. Oliver died due to a combination of pneumonia and hypoxic brain injury. The brain injury was caused by seizures and neuroleptic malignant syndrome, an absolute adverse reaction to that very first drug, olanzapine, that Oliver had requested not to be given. Oliver was given psychotropic medication as a consequence of behaviour whilst in seizure that was seen or perceived as challenging. However, we believe that there was a misunderstanding of his behaviour and that there was a failure to make reasonable adjustments. For Oliver, that would otherwise, reasonable adjustments that would have helped Oliver manage his behaviour and his anxiety would definitely have de-escalated that. We believe that olanzapine should never have been given to Oliver, as he was sensitive to antipsychotic medication. Several community-based consultant doctors who had seen Oliver had written exactly the same thing. We had asked throughout Oliver's care that he not be given antipsychotic medication. Our wishes were ignored, and worse still, Oliver himself had made an advance verbal decision stating that he was not to be administered any antipsychotic medications. Cruelly, Oliver was reassured that this would not happen, and his voice was not heard, and it cost him his life.
So, Ms. McGowan, following Oliver's death, that galvanised you and your husband into action.
Absolutely.
You wanted to make sure that this would not happen again, but also that the community understood what happened to Oliver could happen to other people as well. And you set out in your statement how you developed an advocacy campaign, and you say in paragraph 27 that to gain public interest, you had to become social media smart. Now, you are very social media smart. What can you tell the Royal Commission about why you took the advocacy approach that you did and how you've used advocacy to highlight Oliver's case?
For me, I was absolutely ignorant where social media is concerned, but I was absolutely driven. For us, Oliver was so high functioning, we couldn't believe this had happened to Oliver. And I, without doubt, realised if it could happen to my son, it could happen to absolutely anybody else. So I'll just pick up from paragraph 27, if that's okay. So to gain public interest, I had to become social media smart. And I joined Twitter and over 100 private autistic and learning disability groups on Facebook. I told people all about Oliver, explaining how clinicians were not effectively trained in how to understand autism and intellectual disability. I told them how they didn't understand how to make the most basic of reasonable adjustments, how this was wrong for the patients, but absolutely wrong for the clinicians also. I spent over 15 hours every single day continually asking people to sign my parliamentary petition. It really was incredibly time-consuming and really, really hard work. And I didn't allow myself time to grieve. I felt strongly that there were far too many people suffering like Oliver did for me not to do anything about it. And I challenged my grief into doing something positive, and I still do this to this day. As part of Oliver's campaign, I travelled from Australia at my own expense and went across England, going into medical schools and hospital trusts, telling Oliver's story and teaching them about the most basic of reasonable adjustments, STOMP, which we've talked about, and the principles of ask, listen, do. And these principles are basic, and they are ask. Ask people with a learning disability, autism or both, their families and carers for their opinions and concerns about their treatment that belongs to them. Listen. Listen to all involved and show respect to those opinions and concerns. Do something about it and work in partnership with them.
And so this has led to the Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism. And you have worked on developing this particular training program because you believe that doctors and clinicians, if they were trained in understanding autism and intellectual disability, you might achieve better outcomes. What can you tell the Royal Commission about the Oliver McGowan mandatory training and the rollout that's presently occurring in the UK?
Thank you. The Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism is Oliver's legacy. When Oliver was being treated by the doctors and in hospital, I believed that the doctors and clinicians were trained in autism and intellectual disability. And I believed that they knew more than me. Me, as an early years educator specialising in autism and intellectual disability, I thought they knew more than me. However, it became clear from Oliver's inquest into his death that there was no mandatory training for health professionals in relation to this issue. On the 22nd of October 2018, I took my petition to the UK Parliament demanding that training on intellectual disability and autism be mandatory for all health and social care professionals. This petition ultimately led to the UK government making a commitment in 2019 to introduce the Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism for all health and social care staff. This commitment was outlined by the UK government in their consultation response that was titled Right to be Heard. This commitment was also in response to the recommendations made in the second annual Learning Disability Mortality Review, which I will describe below. The Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism is now being trialled in England and will then be evaluated before being rolled out nationally. I hope that we will also manage to get the UK Health and Social Care Act 2008, regulated 2014, amended to require all NHS and social care providers who carry out regulated activities to ensure that their staff have achieved the learning outcomes relevant to their role. Current plans are that these changes would come into force in April 2021.
Now, in your statement, you outline how you became involved in the STOMP campaign and provide the Royal Commission with a very detailed overview of the STOMP campaign. But I want to ask you about another campaign that you've also been involved in and ask you to talk about the importance of the Learning Disability Mortality Review, the LEADER issue. So this starts at paragraph 50 of your statement. And you say in the statement, this is a national program that was established in 2015 to conduct reviews of the deaths of people with learning disabilities. And I think someone's just said, is a learning disability an intellectual disability? How's that language used between Australia and the UK?
So learning disability and intellectual disability is the same thing, absolutely the same thing. LEADER.
What about LEADER? Tell us about LEADER and the importance of LEADER.
LEADER is vital, I believe. LEADER, or the Learning Disability Mortality Review, is a national programme that was established in 2015 to conduct reviews of the deaths of people with learning disabilities. The University of Bristol is one of the partners in the programme, which is funded and run by NHS England. Now, I understand that the programme was established in response to recommendations of the 2013 report of the Confidential Inquiry into the Premature Deaths of People with Intellectual Disabilities, known as SIPOLD in the UK. SIPOLD reported that compared to the general population, more people with learning disabilities died from causes that were potentially amenable to change by good quality healthcare. According to the University of Bristol website, a key part of the LEADER programme is to support local areas to review the deaths of all people with learning disabilities aged 4 years and over, irrespective of whether the death was expected or not, the cause of death or the place of death. This enables them to identify good practice of what has worked well and what hasn't, as well as where improvements to the provisions of care could be made. Oliver's death is currently being reviewed through the LEADER process right now.
All right, so can I ask you to pause there? You don't know the outcome of that review yet, is that right?
That's right.
Now, in your statement, you've set out some lessons that you think might be lessons that Australia could learn. And can I ask you to talk to the Royal Commission about some of the lessons that you've observed, both from having lived in Australia now for a period of time and also your experience in the UK. So this is paragraph 54, and I think you wanted to read these last few parts of your statement to the Royal Commission.
Thank you.
I invite you to do that.
54. I believe that there may be similar issues in Australia in respect of the over-medication and premature deaths of people with disability. As such, there are lessons that Australia could learn from the STOMP campaign and through the LEADER programme. The key lessons that could be applied in Australia are awareness, training and communication. I also think that Australia should conduct national reviews into the deaths of people with learning disabilities, like the LEADER programme. It is crucial to know how many deaths there are each year and how many of the people with learning disabilities who have died prematurely were taking psychotropic medications. Such reviews could examine whether people with learning disabilities are dying preventable deaths. Through such reviews, the causes of the high rates of premature deaths of people with intellectual disability and autism might be determined and addressed. Among other things, Australia must address why so many people with an intellectual disability are medicated off-label. We need to ask whether alternative non-pharmaceutical methods have been trialled first when a person shows perceived behaviours that challenge, and they must be evaluated. One of the key benefits of the STOMP campaign in England has been to promote awareness of this problem. In Australia, I work with children in schools and early years settings, and I am seeing for myself that there are children in nearly every classroom who are medicated to control perceived behaviours. I am seeing children who, in my opinion, are over-medicated. The children's reactions are very slow. They appear disengaged and are not always to interact with their peers. There are attitudinal problems with respect to the use of medication, and many people do not seem to be aware of alternatives, such as behaviour support or management techniques. When I have talked to members of the public in Australia about this issue, particularly people from older generations, they don't seem to know what to do other than to medicate people who have what they perceive to be behaviours that challenge. Greater awareness can highlight the inequalities in health and social care that people with intellectual disability and autism face in Australia. Awareness will also help to tell us just how many people are dying premature and preventable deaths. It is important that health professionals, social care and disability support workers all have appropriate training in assisting people with an intellectual disability and autism. Australia should also have standardised mandatory training in relation to these issues. As I have stated above, when everybody has been given the same training, this allows for everyone to be evaluated, assessed and monitored in respect to this issue. I believe the Oliver McGowan mandatory training in learning disability and autism could and should be adopted here in Australia to support clinicians in gaining understanding of alternatives to psychotropic medications, of how to make reasonable adjustments, and of appropriate behaviour management. Communication with people with intellectual disability and their families about their health and treatment is very important. Some of the health professionals who treated my son did not properly listen to our son's views regarding the use of psychotropic medication. It is vital that the patient is kept at the heart of all decision making, giving them an equal say in their care and treatment that belongs to them. Health practitioners who are supporting and treating people who have a learning disability and or autism should A, ask people with a learning disability, autism or both, their families and carers for their opinions and concerns about their treatment. Listen to all involved and show respect for those opinions and concerns. And C, do something about it and work in partnership with them. They should treat all patients in a way that they would wish to be treated themselves, with respect and dignity. They must remember that the care that they are giving should always be in partnership with the patient and, where appropriate, with their families and carers. They must also understand how to make reasonable adjustments and how to modify their language and communication. They must ensure that their body language is non-threatening, not invading the space of the patient with intellectual disability, not standing over them. They must be careful not to use a lot of medical jargon. They need to be aware that their patient may need time to process what is being said and may need information to be repeated. This does not mean talking to patients as though they are children. In conclusion, ultimately, however, there must be government support and commitment to addressing these problems. The government must start taking these issues seriously from start to finish. I have observed that Australia is a very proud country which says that it treats its citizens with fairness. However, I don't think this is always the case where people with intellectual disability and or autism are concerned. The work of researchers like Professor Julian Troller show that they are not always able to have equal health outcomes as the rest of the general public. It is not fair or right that they are dying younger than their peers. It is not fair that professionals, clinicians, are not given the education and skills required to help them enable patients with intellectual disability and autism to have better healthcare outcomes. I truly hope that the Royal Commission will make recommendations that will help a story like Oliver's ever having to be told here in Australia. Thank you.
Ms McGowan, on behalf of the Royal Commission, we express our condolences for the loss of Oliver, but also to thank you and your husband for coming to the hearing room today and to share your experience and also to assist the Royal Commission to understand about some of the developments that you've been involved in. But please, as the Commission, that's the end of Ms McGowan's evidence.
Thank you. I'll just ask if either Commissioner McEwen or Commissioner Atkinson have any questions of Ms McGowan. First, perhaps Commissioner McEwen, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I have one question. Ms McGowan, you talked about the Oliver McGowan mandatory training. Could you just tell, perhaps briefly, which individual and organisation may be involved in designing and delivering that training?
I will. So there was a trial where lots of organisations, it was open to the public, charities, everybody, where people were to place a bid that would look at, it's called a Core Capabilities Framework and the Right to Be Heard document. And we were looking at what types of training they would put forward, and they were selected. Oliver's training must address culture. We have to look at subconscious bias. We have to look at the laws, the Equalities Act, the Human Rights Act, the Mental Capacity Act. We need to address reasonable adjustments. And the consortia that was selected will be looking at all of these core ingredients. But Oliver's training, to me, I always look at Oliver and what would have made a difference to Oliver and what could potentially have saved his life. And that is what Oliver's training is about. But if I can add quickly, I feel strongly that it is wrong that we expect our clinicians, so our doctors, nurses, social workers, that we expect them to suddenly know how to help a person with intellectual disability and or autism when they are in a sensory crisis. How can we expect them to suddenly know what to do, how to de-escalate a situation, if they've not been given the skills to do so? We wouldn't expect them to go out and fix a car if they've not been given mechanical training. So why do we expect them to suddenly know how to treat and support our most vulnerable people? They simply don't have the skills to do so right now, and it is affecting lives, it costs lives, and it costs the quality of life. And that's what Oliver's training is all about.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Atkinson, who I cannot see on the screen at the moment, but nonetheless, is there a question? Have we lost her? She said no. She said no. As you can see, Ms McGowan, our technology is flawless in every respect. I want to add to what Ms Eastman has said, to express on behalf of the Commissioners our condolences on the loss of Oliver, but to say how proud you can be of what you are doing in his memory. The evidence you've given is very important to us. It'll form part of the permanent record of this Commission, and you can rest assured that we will pay very close attention to what you've said. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners. If we can take an adjournment now till probably 12 or just after 12, and the next witness will be Dr. Catherine Franklin.
Well, we'll take an adjournment till 12:05. Thank you again.
Thank you.